This is part 3 of C# interview questions video series. In this video, we'll answer this interview question: why and when should we use an abstract class? This interview question could also be asked in a slightly different way. Give an example of where we could use an abstract class. Interfaces and abstract classes are complex subjects. If we answer the questions related to them properly in an interview, chances are the interviewer may get very good impression about you, and in the subsequent questions, even if we make slight mistakes, the interviewer may be happy to forgive you. At least in the interviews that I do, I would definitely ask questions related to interfaces and abstract classes. So in this video, let's try and answer this question: why use abstract classes, with an example. Let's say in an organization there are two types of employees: full-time employee and contract employee. First, let's design full-time employee class. So here I have a blank console application. So first let's go ahead and add a class file, and let's call it full-time employee. And to speed things up, I have already provided the implementation for full-time employee class. So let's copy and paste that class definition within this file. So if you look at this class, this is very straightforward. We have got 4 auto-implemented properties here: ID, first name, last name, and annual salary. And we have got 2 methods: get full name, which is going to return the full name of the employee by concatenating the first name and last name with a space in between them. And we have another method here which is going to compute monthly salary. So how do we compute the monthly salary? Divide annual salary by 12. So very straightforward class. Now let's go ahead and design the other type of employee, which is contract employee. So let's add another class file to this project, and let's call this ContractEmployee.cs. And to speed things up, I'm going to copy this definition and paste it within contract employee and change it as required. Let's make this class public. Okay, so even if it's contract employee, he is still going to have ID, first name, last name, but a contract employee will not have annual salary. Instead, they will have hourly pay. So public int hourly pay, and then number of hours worked. So let's call this maybe total hours. Okay, and to get the monthly salary of a contract employee, how would we get that? Multiply the hourly pay by total hours. That's going to give us the monthly salary. So this dot total hours into this dot hourly pay. So that should give us the monthly salary of a contract employee. Now, if we have to use these classes within program.cs file, we have the main method. So we would create an instance of our full-time employee class. So full-time employee FTE equals to new full-time employee. And then obviously there are several properties. So ID equals, let's say, 101. First name equals, let's say, Mark. And last name equals Mark May, and annual salary maybe 60,000. Okay, now we have full-time employee, and if we want to print their details, console.writeLine full-time employee dot get full name should give us the full name, and similarly to get their annual salary, we'll simply say monthly salary, get monthly salary. Okay, and let's print a dotted line. Okay, so in a similar fashion, let's go ahead and create an instance of our part-time employee, contract employee as well. So contract employee, let's call it CTE, equals new contract employee. Contract employee has got an ID. Let's say the ID is 102. First name is Sarah, and let's say Sarah. S is the last name, and contract employee will not have annual salary. Instead, there will be hourly pay. Let's say hourly pay is 200, and total hours he worked in a month is maybe 40. And let's print the full name of the contract employee and the total, monthly salary of the contract employee. So let's go ahead and run this now and see what is the output we get. Look at that. Mark May is the full name of the employee, and his monthly salary is 5,000 because his annual salary is 60,000. So when you divide that by 12, we get 5,000. And Sarah S is the full name, and her monthly salary is 8,000. Alright, so this is working, the program is working as expected. But what is the problem with this design? So if you look at these two classes, these two classes are definitely related. Both of them are of type employee. And if you look at these two classes, there's a lot of common code between them. For example, ID, first name, last name properties are same in both the classes. And similarly, get full name, whether the employee is a full-time employee or a contract employee, you would compute their full name in the same way by concatenating their first name and last name. Look at that, the implementation is exactly the same. The only thing that's different between these two classes is full-time employee has got annual salary property, contract employee has got these two properties in addition, hourly pay and total hours worked. And then the implementation of get monthly salary is slightly different between these two classes. Otherwise, they're almost identical. Okay, so since we have a lot of duplicated code here, the code maintainability will be a problem, because tomorrow if we want to introduce a middle name property, we have to do it for both the classes, because irrespective of whether you are a full-time employee or a contract employee, you may have a middle name. And in order to compute the full name, we may have to again introduce that middle name within the get full name method of both the classes. Now here we only have two related classes, but in reality, depending on the types of objects that you are creating, you may have several different related classes. Maybe with this example, we may have something called part-time employee or director employee, things like that. So if we have more related classes, then the number of places that we have to make changes is going to grow as well, and that is error prone, and number two, time consuming. So code maintainability is going to be a big issue if we duplicate code like this. So how are we going to solve this problem? So here these two classes are related, there's common functionality between them, and that common functionality is duplicated between them. Okay, so how are we going to get rid of that duplicated problem? Okay, to avoid these issues, this duplicated code issue, what we can do is we can move that common functionality into a base class. Okay, and then we can make these two classes inherit from that base class. But if we have to design a base class for these two classes, then the obvious next question is going to be, should we design that base class as an abstract class or as a concrete class, that is a non-abstract class? First, let's design it as a concrete class and see what are the problems that we are going to face, and then we'll try and use an abstract class. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is add another class file and call this maybe base employee.cs. And let's first make this class public, and we are going to move the common code. That is, look at this. If you look at full-time employee, we've got ID, first name, last name. That's the common piece of code. So I'm going to take those three properties and move them into base employee class. And I'm also going to take get full name method and move that into base employee class. Okay, so now if you look at this full-time employee class, it's very simple. it only has the code that is relevant to full-time employee, or that is specific to full-time employee. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is make this full-time employee class inherit from base employee. Okay, so that way this class is going to get ID, first name, last name properties, and get full name method as well. In a similar fashion, I'm going to make this contract employee class inherit from base employee class, and since in the base employee we already have ID, first name, last name, I'm going to get rid of those properties, and we need to retain these properties because they are specific to contract employee class, and we can get rid of this get full name method because that's already available in the base class. But let's leave this get monthly salary because we implement that method differently in these two classes. Okay, so now if you look at this class, okay, the base class has get full name. Let's also introduce here get monthly salary method. So public int get monthly salary. Now let's mark it as virtual method. Okay, because the base employee class doesn't know how to provide the implementation for contract employee and full-time employee. It's the responsibility of the derived classes to do that. So that's the reason why we are marking it as virtual, and we are going to throw a not implemented exception. So okay, so very straightforward base class here. And within the derived classes, what we are going to do is override get monthly salary and provide the implementation specific to that class. So similarly, let's override that here. Alright, so let's build the solution, and look at that, our program still compiles, and when I run this, it's going to work in the same way. But what did we achieve here? We have moved all the common code into the base class. So tomorrow if we have to introduce full-time, middle name property, we can do that only within the base class, and it will be available to all the derived classes. So code maintainability is going to be much easier. Okay, but then by creating a non-abstract class, that is a concrete class, we have introduced another problem here. Because look at this, in our organization we only have two types of employees, contract employee and full-time employee. So in the main method, if you look at the code, we are creating an instance of full-time employee and contract employee, and we are using it the way we want to. Okay, but then here, since base employee is created as a concrete class, there is nothing stopping us from creating an instance of base employee class. Look at that, I can create base employee B equals new base employee, and then I can initialize the properties 103, let's say first name equals Prajim, last name equals tech, okay. So here basically we have created an instance of base employee class, and then we can still use console.writeLine base employee dot get full name, and similarly base employee dot get monthly salary. Okay, now what do you think is the problem going to be with this code? When we compile this, look at this, when I build the solution on the status bar, build succeeded, we didn't get any compiler error. But when we actually run this, we are going to get an exception. Why? That's because if you look at get monthly salary in the base employee class, this class doesn't know how to implement that. So that's why it's throwing not implemented exception. So when we run this program, we are going to get that exception at runtime. Okay, that's one problem. Another problem is our organization only has two types of employees, full-time employee, contract employee. There's nothing called base employee. It's only an abstract concept. Since we want our common functionality to be present in the base class, we moved that common functionality to the base employee class. But we don't have anything like base employee within an organization. So we don't want developers inadvertently creating an instance of base employee class and using it like this. So we want to prevent them from doing that. Since we have designed that class as a non-abstract class, that is a concrete class, we are not able to stop the developers from doing this. Okay, so that is the problem with using a non-abstract base classes here. Okay, so now to prevent this runtime problem, we can definitely achieve that by simply removing this virtual method from the base employee class, and then within respective classes I can get rid of this override keyword. Now since we don't have get monthly salary within the base employee, we cannot invoke that method, so I can delete that line. So if I run this, the program is going to work. Look at that, Prajim Tech is the full name. That's fine, but we still have that other problem. We don't want developers to be creating instances of base employee class. We don't have such employees within the organization, and we don't want to be doing that. So to prevent developers from creating instances of this base employee class, what we need to do, simply mark this class as abstract. So since we have marked this as an abstract, now look at that, we already have a compiler error. And if I hover my mouse over that red squiggly, look at that, cannot create an instance of the abstract class base employee. Okay, so that is the advantage of using abstract classes. Okay, so it's preventing us from accidentally creating instances of base employee class. I can't even compile now, so we get a compiler error, which is a very good thing. Okay, so let's get rid of this code. Now let's comment that. Now another modification that I'm going to do, look at this, if I run this, it's going to work in the same way. So we have full-time employee there and contract employee there. Okay, now another modification that I'm going to make to this base abstract class is I'm going to introduce this get monthly salary method within the base employee class. So let's actually copy the full signature, and I'm going to make this abstract method. So if we make the method abstract, we don't have to provide the implementation. Okay, only the declaration, and within the derived classes we are going to provide the implementation by overriding it. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this and see if it works in the same way. So it's going to work in the same way, but why are we introducing this abstract method into this base employee? That's because the advantage we get by introducing this method as an abstract method is that all the derived classes now are forced to provide the implementation for get monthly salary method. Okay, because this contract employee class is inheriting from base employee, and base employee has got this abstract method, so contract employee has to provide implementation for that method. Otherwise, look at what's going to happen. We will get a compilation error. Again, that's a very good thing, because if you have different types of employees, contract employee, full-time employee, maybe another type of employee called part-time employee, any type of employee should have a salary. Okay, so that's why when you include this abstract method get monthly salary in the base class, it's going to force all the derived types to provide implementation. That way we are not going to provide some functionality to employee related classes. Alright, so in short, we would create an abstract class when we want to move the common functionality of two or more related classes into a base class, and when we don't want that base class to be instantiated. So in this case, what did we do? We moved the common functionality of full-time employee and contract employee into the common base class, base employee, and we made that abstract because we don't want developers to accidentally be creating instances of that base employee abstract class. Now, if your requirement is such that if you want, the capability of instantiating the base class, then you would do normal inheritance there, and you would not mark the base class as an abstract class. Okay, but then in short, this is the answer. We would create an abstract class when we want to move the common functionality of two or more related classes into a base class, and when we don't want that base class to be instantiated. So here is our base abstract class and the two derived classes. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.